Welcome to the Jampack Report today for April the 16th of 2023. My name is Samuel Adams, and as always, we've got a packed show filled with gaming news for us to discuss, including a big departure at 343 once again, adding to a growing list of people that have left the company for greener pastures, or potentially to help create a greener pasture for the future of Halo. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has been pushed all the way into 2024. Cliffy B says LawBreakers could be back, and we'll talk a bit about Immortals of Aveum, a big magic FPS that has taken the world by storm since its debut trailer earlier last week. We've got all this and more on today's show, so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. Before we hit the main topics of today's show, I did want to address the elephant in the room, and that's the fact that we aren't talking about Redfall being locked at 30 FPS on this week's show, and that's because I already talked about it. We had an episode midweek last week that dug into the news. I shared my opinions on 30 FPS versus 60 FPS in 2023, and also the hot take that this is borderline false advertising at this point, because everything Redfall has been 60 FPS up until this point as far as video promotions go. So if you want to learn more about that, want to have that conversation, you can find that episode on podcast feeds and here on YouTube as well. If you're watching the video version of this show, I'll have it linked in a card for you to go check out. But to dig into today's main topics, coming from Windows Central's Brendan Lowry, Halo franchise director Frank O'Connor may have left Microsoft. Frank O'Connor, the franchise creative director for Xbox's flagship shooter series Halo, may have parted ways with Microsoft after working on the franchise for nearly 20 years. O'Connor's LinkedIn page has been updated with an April 2023 end date for his time as Halo's franchise creative director, along with a new NA role. Though there has not been an official confirmation of O'Connor's departure, these changes suggest he may have left his position. And this news comes after last week's main topic, where Joseph Staten has now officially left 343. So there is a lot of turnover at a very high level over there at 343, and I wanted to share this take from Okami Games that I think is really relevant for this conversation. Okami13 says on Twitter, some of the biggest names at 343 have left Halo in recent months. Frank O'Connor, Bonnie Ross, Joseph Staten, Kiki Wolfkill. It seems this is a real changing of the guard for the studio. Perhaps this is exactly what Halo needs. And I've got to say, this is where I'm at with it. This is my opinion, because if you look at how Halo has been handled at 343 over the past few years, I think there has been a valiant attempt to bring it back from the brink, because after Halo 5 Guardians, I think that was a low point for Halo as a franchise overall, and I think that Halo Infinite is significantly in a better spot than it was 5 years ago. That said, there is still so much work to be done, and I've been listening to a lot of streams, a lot of podcasts, a lot of conversations about the state of Halo Infinite and the state of Halo as a franchise. And the general consensus from a lot of people is that Halo has had a huge missed opportunity over the course of not only this generation, but last generation, with the rise of first-person shooters to continue through the years, to see more and more popularity coming in for the genre. Halo is just archaic, and it's unfortunate that Halo Infinite wasn't able to achieve the greatness that Halo has the potential to achieve. And so if it takes these long-standing studio heads, these long-standing franchise leaders to step down and to have a new wave of people come in and take the helm and start really driving this franchise in the right direction, then so be it. I was talking in a Discord a couple of days ago, and people were talking about this news specifically, that Frank O'Connor was leaving 343. And at this point, I'm just taking the Jesus take the wheel approach, because Halo Infinite's in a good spot. I'm having a good time grinding the battle pass. The events are fun. Right now, I'm having fun. Just do whatever you need to do to make a good game and drive the franchise forward. I'm just a leaf on the shoulders of a mighty stream. Take me where you want me to go. So another big departure at 343, again, unconfirmed from the studio, but they don't really have an obligation to confirm or deny everybody that's leaving. I think that after checking out his LinkedIn, you can pretty much confirm, yes, this is indeed the case. It looks like Frank O'Connor has left 343. I'm taking this as an opportunity to be hopeful for the future and to not look at the pessimistic side where you could say these longtime leaders are leaving. I think it's time for people to potentially see some change, for some new leaders to come in and once again take up that helm and ride with it. I'm ready to see what the future has in store. Something you won't be seeing in the near future is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, because it's been pushed from its May release date all the way back to February 2nd of 2024. That's roughly 9 months or one human baby. The official Twitter account reads, "We have made the tough but necessary decision to take the time needed to work on getting the game to be the best quality experience for players. Thank you to our amazing community for the continued support, patience, and understanding. There is much more to share in the months ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in Metropolis next year." Now, if you haven't checked out Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, it's a bit of a mixed bag. According to Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg, this delay is not meant to change the fundamental mechanics of the game. They got some flack whenever the gameplay was shown off earlier this year because there's an entire armor system kind of similar to what you see in Destiny, where you grind for more gear, you equip that gear, eventually you get something better, and it's just kind of this continual churn and burn. As I say that sentence, I want you all to keep in mind, this is a superhero game coming from Rocksteady, so it didn't necessarily align with the expectations people had for the game. What Jason Schreier says is that this is all for polish. This is to make sure the game is running well, running smoothly. And as you can see from the trailer shown off from the official PlayStation account after the State of Play last month, I guess it's a couple of months ago at this point, this game visually looks good. Now, this can't be indicative of how the game is running on a PlayStation 5 necessarily, on an Xbox Series X necessarily. Who is to say that this pre-rendered trailer shown off for, story purposes is going to be the reflection of what you have whenever you actually dive into the game? That's still kind of TBD, so they could need additional polish for that. But Jason Schreier, once again, has said they are not going to be changing the fundamental gameplay elements of the game, so I think it's still going to have the issues that fans had with it. And ultimately, it's up to Rocksteady to net out a good game, to make something that's fun to play, that's engaging, and that fulfills fans' expectations. Again, what you're seeing right here as far as gameplay goes doesn't necessarily reflect what I would want from a new Rocksteady game, because coming off of games like Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight, I think that kind of created this identity for Rocksteady that's going to be really difficult for them to break out of. If you told me this was a spinoff, like this was coming from the team behind Gotham Knights, I would totally believe you there. I think that this could be one of those spinoff kind of experiences, but would I rather have a more traditional story-based single-player Suicide Squad game? Yeah, I think I'd probably rather have that. Of course, there have been long-standing rumors of a Superman game that was in development. I think I'd probably rather have that too. But we can't talk about what we would rather have. We've got to talk about what we've got here today, because this is the game they're putting out, and there is probably fun to be had here. I know that Joseph Moran over on the Trophy Room is excited about this game, saying that, it does look like a good time. And I get it. If you want a shooter where you just shoot the big purple balls on massive enemies, go for it. Have a blast. That's pretty much what this game looks like for me. And the writing does seem fun. The characters seem interesting. I think there is going to be some good here. I just don't know if there is enough good to make it the Rocksteady game that people have expected or that people have anticipated over the course of the last roughly decade at this point. So we'll see how this one pans out. Again, the game has been pushed all the way back to February 2nd of 2024. Now, by that time, we could even have some news on LawBreakers, because Cliff Bleszinski says stay tuned for LawBreakers news. And if you haven't heard of LawBreakers, it came out back in 2017, and it was this abilities-based first-person shooter. In a lot of ways, it kind of aligned with what X-Defiant is bringing from the team at Ubisoft, where it was a traditional first-person shooter, but it had a couple of different elements along with some gravity infusion that made things really, really interesting. But as reported on here by Jordan Middler over at VGC, Bleszinski tweeted on Thursday that he'd received a text from his lawyer about the game. Developed by the now-defunct developer Boss Key Productions and directed by Bleszinski, LawBreakers was released in August 2017 to positive reviews, but the game was shut down just 1 year later, citing a low player count as the main issue. Here's the tweet itself. Just got a text from my lawyer about LawBreakers. Stay tuned. Now, what's interesting is Cliffy B adds a couple of additional tweets to his thread saying, "It confuses the hell out of me how people were rooting for the game to fail, and when it did, now there's a ton of support for it. Gamers are weird, yo. Like, the team worked their asses off on it. I relocated many people from other parts of the world for it, and the internet was like, har har, it doesn't have enough players. Meanwhile, studio creators and I have to deal with a year of crippling depression out of guilt." So if you haven't checked out the story of LawBreakers, Cliffy B has a book out right now, and of course, Cliff Bleszinski, massive leader in the first-person shooter space and third-person, big driver behind Gears of War. He's got a huge legacy in the gaming industry, but with LawBreakers, there was something special here, and if you weren't around for the launch of LawBreakers, it had so many cool elements. It was a traditional first-person shooter that felt kind of like a Call of Duty arcade-style situation, but it also had a lot of abilities. Gravity was a big part of the game as well, with these low-gravity areas where you could jump around, float around. Again, lots of cool, different lightning abilities, explosions, rockets. It was just an action-packed good time. And so whenever the game launched in 2017, as Jordan Middler said, people really enjoyed it. The reviews were positive, but it also came out at a time whenever Overwatch was coming out, which is something Cliffy B cites as well as being one of the reasons that it failed, and it just never really gained the public attention that it needed to survive in a genre that was, at the time, blowing up with so many clones of popular games. Also, 2017-2018 was the rise of the Battle Royale. That's whenever PUBG really started to come into its own. That's whenever Fortnite first started making its debut and really starting to grow popularity there. And so I think at that point, people's attention began to shift more towards the Battle Royale space rather than something that was more reflective of a traditional first-person shooter. So now, in a world where we have games like X-Defiant that are getting incredibly good impressions, where Call of Duty, in the traditional sense, has come back in a lot of ways, and Battle Royales are starting to get a little bit worn, a little bit old for a lot of players, this potentially has a good opportunity to come back. So nothing to share right now, but the fact that Cliffy B is working on it, the fact that this could potentially be a reality, makes me incredibly excited. So we will see if LawBreakers does end up making a return. If it does, I'm going to be the first person in line to play it. And by in line to play it, I mean hitting the download button. Not going to a physical event for LawBreakers, unless I'm invited. Cliffy, come on, man, send me the invite. However, another game I'm going to be in line for on day one, and by in line for, I mean hitting the download button for, is Immortals of Aveum. And this game had a trailer that came out earlier this week, and my timeline was filled with it. People are really excited about this game, and this is a new one from the EA Originals team, but it's not going to be the budget it takes to kind of title that the EA Originals team has become known for. This is a full-price title, but it feels like kind of a AA game in a way. We'll talk about that once we talk about the trailer, but I did want to go down and talk about the write-up on the Xbox Wire that gives a pretty good description of what this game is going to be. It says, Immortals of Aveum is an upcoming single-player magic FPS set in the titular land of Aveum. You'll assume the role of Jack, a battle mage learning to harness the magic coursing through his world. As an unforeseen, Jack discovers his abilities later in life, and Aveum's most powerful kingdoms are at war. It's up to Jack to unlock his power and work alongside the Immortals to help save Aveum from destruction. And this write-up has a lot of interesting insights, but also some really good-looking screenshots that kind of show you some quick images from the trailer, but also some snippets of gameplay and some snippets of combat like we can see here. But the best way to dig into a game and see if it's going to be something you enjoy is to check out the trailer, and this is coming from the Immortals of Aveum YouTube account. Whenever I saw this, I immediately just was drawn to it, because this in a lot of ways reminds me of kind of what Avowed is pitching, but with more of an FPS skew and less of an RPG skew. Of course, I'm sure there are going to be skill trees to unlock. As the description says, Jack is unlocking his power, so I'm sure that's going to reflect in you learning things as you fight more enemies, as you make your way through the story, that kind of thing. But the level of quality this game is bringing is something that's really impressive. One thing that does concern me is that when we get to the gameplay snippets, not these pre-rendered trailers that you're seeing here or these pre-rendered cutscenes that you're seeing, but the actual gameplay looks a bit choppy. And that could just be low bit rate in their capture side of things for the team whenever they were putting this trailer together, which is what I think it is based on just my experience with video editing and things like that. But if this game can deliver on the tone and the quality the trailer is setting forth, I think we're in for a treat here. And I don't think it's going to be necessarily a Game of the Year contender, But whenever I'm checking this out, it kind of reminds me of Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning, or even just the original Kingdoms of Amalur, where it wasn't necessarily the big AAA killer title for that year that it came out, but it was something that people look back on and say, that was awesome, that was a really good time. And I like these games. I like these ones that are kind of in between the biggest of the big and the small little indies. Is it going to be worth $70? Time will tell. But just to scroll through and check out some of the gameplay, I think we're getting to some snippets right here as they land and they start their little battle. It is a magic first-person shooter. I mean, you've got a lot of different abilities, a lot of different options for how you approach each individual combat, and it's just a little bit overwhelming whenever you see it in action, but it also shows the variety of gameplay that you're getting ready to have with this one. So let's see if we can find a release date here in the description. Pre-order Immortals of Aveum. Heading over to the Steam page, it does come out on July the 20th, so coming up sooner rather than later, but it really does look like one that could be a big summer hit. I think that right now we've got a lot of games that are coming out in the next few weeks. Dead Island 2, Minecraft Legends, we've got on the PlayStation side of things, Horizon Burning Shores, I believe is what that DLC is called, the big expansion. So once all of that gets out, and once, of course, Zelda lands, things like that, and people have more bandwidth to dig into some new games, this could be landing at the perfect time. So July 20th is one that's going to be on my radar. I'm looking forward to seeing more from the game in the months ahead. I'm sure this one is going to be a big summer showcase game. And from the Xbox side, could this potentially be one that comes to EA Play eventually? Stands to reason it could be bundled into Game Pass once that hits that service. So we'll see, but I'm excited to see more about that one. I like the variety that it brings. Now, to wrap up today's show, a couple of additional stories to cover. First, Inscryption is now available for Xbox Series X, S, and Xbox One. This is the cool little card game that came out on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC last year, but it was unfortunately not available on Xbox until now. This was somewhat of a shadow drop, and you can pick it up for $20. Definitely one that was on the indie scene in 2022 that people really enjoyed. So if you've been waiting for the Xbox release, there is that. And finally, the Xbox Elite Series 2 has some additional color combos for you to explore if you do want to dig in. You will now have the choice of 16 main colors for your top and back case, 12 colors for the A, B, X, and Y buttons, 17 different accent colors for the paddles and D-pad, and 25 accent colors for the rest of the controller. So the world is your oyster when it comes to the Xbox Design Lab here. You can change your case, change your controller, the little circle around the thumbsticks, everything you want, you can make a lot of different color combos for. And I like this personally because you can now design your regular Xbox controller or the Elite controller, but you can also have color combos that are aligned with games. Like there's a Ghostwire Tokyo suggested design, there's a Minecraft Legends suggested design that they highlight down here below. So I like seeing those little low effort, easy marketing promotions that just make it feel like a more encapsulating experience. So I dig it. I thought I'd mention it here if you do want to design a new controller. My only complaint is that this would probably imply that an Elite Series 3 isn't on the way or isn't seeing an impending announcement during the summer showcase here in a couple of months, because it's high time we get a new Elite Series controller. But the real question is, how can they improve on the Elite Series design they have now beyond just making it a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more durable? So if you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. But either way, excited to see some more color combos here, and hey, if you want one, go ahead and dive in, design your own, and get it shipped out. But that rounds out this week's episode of the Jampack Report. If you enjoy this one and you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube or add the show to your podcast feed of choice and get it delivered to you each and every Sunday, along with the rare midweek update if a big story drops. As always, I can't thank you guys enough for the support. We smashed 10,000 subs last week, and the train keeps rolling. We've got another big week of content ahead, and I cannot wait to get into it. But until next time, you guys have a good one. I'll talk to you soon, and keep on playing.